逃走集団が14街道南交差点付近で乱闘中との通報が入りました。
After the mediocre misery of Terry Gilliam's Brazil last week, this week our dystopia is of a much more vivid and explosive variety. Tonight we're talking about Katsuhiro Otomo's 1988 cyberpunk action film, Akira. Akira was originally a manga series written and illustrated by Otomo. It ran from 1982 to 1990 as a serial in Young magazine. Otomo had made a name for himself adding science fiction elements and new art styles to manga. Something that I think we don't think about much now. There's a lot of different types of manga, and because of that, a lot of different types of anime and animated films. But his style was novel in the 1970s and 1980s, and would have huge crossover appeal, gaining a big following in the West. Akira would be one of the first manga series to be completely translated into English for an American audience by Marvel's Epic Comics imprint, starting in 1988 when the film Akira was released. One factor that's been credited with the runaway success of the manga was the decision to bring a full-color version to American audiences. After a frustrating period in 1979 when Otomo attempted to finish his series Fireball, the story of a group of freedom fighters attempting to expose the secret that their city is governed by a supercomputer called Atom, after one of the freedom fighters who has an older brother with psychic powers loses contact with him, the older brother has been taken and connected to the supercomputer. Otomo didn't prepare enough for the series and was tired of it after a short time. So he took those themes and started writing a new series called Domu, A Child's Dream, about a child and an old man who possess psychic powers. During this time period, he was asked to come up with a manga series for Young magazine. And out of this period of creative frustration was birthed Akira. Akira takes place in a futuristic Tokyo, now called Neo-Tokyo. The original Tokyo was destroyed by a massive explosion and rebuilt. This explosion is believed to be another nuclear explosion, which kicks off World War III. Rebuilt on an artificial island in Tokyo Bay, this new city is supposed to host the Olympics, when a new rash of anti-government student protests break out around the city. These protests are based around the 1968 university protest, which we've talked about quite a bit in our Mishima episode a couple years ago. Tokyo held the Summer Olympics in 1964, although not at the same time as the protests, but Akira harnessed the post-war tumult of the 1960s, during the period of extreme rapid modernization in Japan. Like in the story of Akira, Japan would actually win the 2020 bid to host the Olympics in Tokyo, which was pointed to for how much Otomo actually managed to predict. And based on slogans in Akira, a movement of anti-government, anti-Olympic protests emerged. Because of COVID, the Olympics would be moved to 2021, by which point Shinzo Abe had resigned in a cloud of scandal, but not before increasing the Japanese military buildup, leaving his successor to deal with the fallout. Again, similar to events in Akira. At the same time as writing Akira, Otomo got involved with the film adaptation of the science fiction manga series, The Genma Wars, as one of the artists working on character development. Seeing what happened on that project led Otomo to understand when he was approached for a film adaptation of Akira, he must retain creative control. And so Otomo became the writer and director of the 1988 film adaptation of Akira. Akira is a cautionary tale about the dangers of pure scientific experimentation. It follows a biker gang led by Kaneda, who eternally looks after his hapless best friend, Tetsuo. As the bikers battle the annoying Juggalo-style clown biker gang, Tetsuo crashes his bike into a small child who's being chased down by government agents. Both Tetsuo and the child are taken by the agents, and the rest of the bikers are arrested. Tetsuo is brought to be part of a secret government project called the Espers, which takes children who display psychic powers and experiments on them, run by a ruthless colonel of the Japanese Self-Defense Forces. In the backdrop of the story, the population of Neo-Tokyo is becoming increasingly restless with a deeply unpopular tax reform program leading to massive unrest and a rash of what's explained as terrorist activity. The government is again corrupt and weak, the military itching to take control. However, the resistance movement isn't just trying to push a different tax proposal, but the resistance fighters who are arrested along with the bikers, including Kai and Ryu, are trying to expose the incredibly expensive and immoral Esper program. It even turns out the original explosion that destroyed Tokyo was the result of experimentation on the original Esper, Akira, when government agents thought they could control the powers within these extraordinarily powerful children. Tetsuo is awakened as an Esper, and his lifetime of being bullied and patronized turns him into a powerful weapon seeking to show his might. Like a lot of the 20th century's most interesting art from Japan, Akira is clearly a meditation and exploration of the scientific mindset that led to the atom bombs being dropped during World War II. Science fiction has been an important way this has been grappled with, even looking at something as iconic as Godzilla, usually disguised from delicate American audiences with some kind of metaphor. It also looks at social alienation in a society that's undergone repeated upheavals, with the Espers being an extreme version of that alienation, but everyone, including the bikers, the protesters, even the government and military, seem alienated. Once it was decided that Akira would be adapted, the Akira Committee partnership, where entertainment companies like Toho, Kodansha, Bandai, Sumitomo, and Laserdisc came together to fund and distribute it, and TMS Entertainment produced the animation. The pretty high budget of 700 million yen, or $5.7 million in 1980s money, was spent to make sure that a futuristic Tokyo could be created in all its glory. This paid off when the box office score for Akira was $49 million. Utilizing state-of-the-art technology, pre-scored dialogue, where dialogue was recorded before the film's production even started,
Take a look at the finished product. Doesn't it look real? Let's hear more about this from the color coordinator, Miss Yamana.
Well, it's quite a bit different from anything I've done before. The film takes place mainly at night. If you look at the color chart, you will see the tremendous variety of dark tones. Many colors you wouldn't see in any other animation. There is such subtlety in the various tones that you wouldn't notice them on a television screen. But in the theater, the large variety of colors really makes a difference. It helps to create the night scenes, but it was quite difficult.
As well as 160,000 animated cells and CGI imagery. One of the lead animators in the film, Makiko Futake, would go on to be Studio Ghibli's lead animator. The animators added 50 new color shades to the standard color palette, which helps many of the night scenes really stand out. Akira has been hailed as one of the greatest films ever made, especially for animated films, and along with its incredibly popular American and French manga releases, would bring Japanese popular culture to Western audiences in a way that we hadn't experienced it before. Before I introduce the panel, please like this video and subscribe to the Movie Night Extravaganza YouTube channel. Then hit that bell to get notified whenever we're streaming. Super chats are now open. If you have any pressing questions, send us a super chat, which helps me maintain the expenses for the show, which I am obligated by the rules of the Geneva Convention to stop everything and ask the panel. Another way to help us out is to become a patron and give us money every month. In exchange, you get access to all of our after parties, bonus content, and we'll tell you even more movies we watched recently. Patreon.com/Movie Night Extra. We have a Movie Night Extravaganza Discord. There's an invite link in the episode description, and we have a Letterboxd HQ account. So those are two more places to follow along with us. Okay, let me introduce the illustrious panel. Conan Neutron is the host of Protonic Reversal, co-host of Movie Night Extravaganza, and the frontman for the band Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends. You can check out his music and hopefully buy some at neutronfriends.bandcamp.com. Was the co-host of Movie Night Extravaganza, a director, writer, and actress who wrote and co-directed Girl in the Basement, along with appearing in horror movies like The Purge Election Year and The Devil's Nightmare. You can catch her voice acting in the podcast series, The Starwell Foundation, and she's the host of What If I Don't Like It, and on TikTok at Movie Runtime. I, of course, am your host who has suddenly gained psychic powers and is ready to explode and then turn into a giant pink baby, Forrest Miller. The future is not a straight line. It is filled with many crossroads. There must be a future we can choose for ourselves.
People are saying this more and more.
By the way, it got cut off. That was Kt Baldassaro. That the name got cut off, and when I was changing the names around, but that's who was the panel.
Here she's in quite a few horror movies.
I was gonna say, do you know how many horror movies I'm in?
Quite a few.
Yeah, at least a few.
So guys, this movie, is this Forrest's first time, right?
Yeah, this is my first time watching it. Although I
Oh.
have seen the Akira slide clip multiple.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. My
Who
favorite
hasn't?
one of those is the is either the Jordan Peele one or the one where people start doing it with like horses and legs and things that don't slide. They're just like, who cares? Ah!
There's I was watching we can watch the compilation later on, but I was watching the compilation and one of them was like, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? And it's like and she just slides up on a bike. It's like
but it's wild that of all the things in this movie, and there are a lot that are like stunning visuals and interesting, that's the thing, because it is a super cool scene, but it isn't like pivotal to the plot. It's just sort of like, oh no, that's just, it looks cool, but it has hit this cultural cachet that goes like way beyond like most anything, really. And it's kind of a trip, but in a cool way where sometimes people don't even know what that's from. Like, what is that from again? And it's like, oh my god.
It's the Akira slide, yeah. Well, I was doing a video this morning about scenes that are more famous than that, and there's really only 4. And when you look at them, you're like, shit, those are the biggest scenes in Western cinema.
Right. No, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
And there's it's a trip. My friends were thinking, what the fuck, because they walked in just as the dolls were worshiping and leaking milk. That's what I'm saying. There's so much just crazy stuff in this, like just insane visuals.
I love the line milk, and then the two kids going blood.
Like if anybody were to say walk in while you were watching, like, what are you watching? What is this? And that's before, I feel like we've gotten to the point now. And I was saying something about it in my Letterboxd review, the idea of the person with superpowers who's completely not only ill-equipped to do with it, but ill-tempered and, not necessarily nefarious, but just like sort of self-involved and wrapped up in their own emotions. We're actually very used to seeing that now. We're used to seeing that, think of The Boys, think of Chronicles, a great example of a movie that did that, a live-action movie. But at the time,
the closest ripoff. Like Chronicle obviously tried to be Akira.
Like years later, yeah. But at the time, the only thing it was doing that was there was the comic book Miracle Man. Well, it was Marvel Man at the time. Look, Miracle Man, Marvel Man. Look up on a website, and I'll tell you all about it because it's a whole like story history. But that was the only one, which is the fact that Kid Miracle Man becomes like a villainous entity, much like Tetsuo does in this. But that's the only one that happened before. Everything else is after. And a lot of those ones, if they have an ounce of integrity amongst them, will give homage to it's like we're doing like a Akira thing. It's like Tetsuo. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like, we live in a time of just the idea of incel culture and people kind of exploring teenage hormones and the whole idea of an angry young man who kind of has had life pounded into him or whatever and feels weak and feels vulnerable and is filled with these emotions on top of I'm guessing Tetsuo as a character is kind of mentally ill, you know what I mean? So that mental illness and the natural kind of hormones shooting through your body. And it's imagine if a kid going through that, which is something that we explore a lot in culture right now, got powers. Right. It would be a nightmare. That would be a literal fucking nightmare.
And this is 1988. It's 1988. The only thing remotely vibe-wise that was doing this was obviously Blade Runner. There's
yes,
but other than that,
it says that he was deeply influenced by that and by William Gibson. He gives credit to the cyberpunk that comes before him. It's not as stylized though. I love the fact that it's not high fashion like you get in Blade Runner.
Yeah. Well, but it is cool. I mean, Kaneda's jacket. It's awesome. I would wear that jacket. Red's not even my color, ironically. I'm sure they do. Yeah, it's probably $300. But anyway.
Oh, that's a good price for it if you can get it for that.
But it is interesting how this neo-futuristic idea for Neo Tokyo in 1988, visually coming from the manga and everything else, manages to like not look that dated, really, especially with the animation style, which is incredible. Like using like the actual real world lighting and effect. I mean, like it's
Well, yeah.
it's understandable.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about 160,000 frames for this movie, and compare that to films of the same length at the same time that we're doing about half as many frames. That means that we're getting more frames per second, which makes it feel more like a real live action film, which is part of my argument with why it shouldn't be done live action. They filmed it in a way that's even more geared that way than, say, your normal animated film of the time. The clip that Forrest just showed where they were saying they're using colors that you really can't even see on a normal television. I am such a nerded out on the fact that I got to watch this for the first time on Ultra HD 4K. And like, yeah, there are colors there that I never noticed. And the way that the light looks so real, it still feels stunning today.
Just go find a Slim from 70mm and letterbox OLED and go like invite yourself over to go watch it. You know,
no, a giant part of that as well is, you know, that there are so many scenes at night and the shading, right? Like you need those extra, like whatever, like 50 colors that they added to the color palette, because like I mean, I guess we do kind of think about it, but like, you know, manga in particular, but just Japanese art, right? Like it's very rules based. And a lot of what Otomo was trying to do at the time, and what he really succeeded in doing in Japan, is breaking those rules, just like one by one. And so it makes perfect sense that when he's actually putting this movie together and decides like, hey, I need to be in creative control and I need to decide who's actually like, you know, working on it and all of these like different positions and stuff. Like it makes perfect sense that on top of that, it's like, all right, well, there's 50 colors, you know, 50 shades, 50 hues that we don't normally see in any kind of stuff that we're creating right now. Like let's add those as well. And then also they did they pre-recorded all of the audio and then actually took the you know, made sure to take the animation and then you know, did it in a backwards way to what they usually do, which is pre-scoring is what they call it. And I have like a whole thing on that I'll play later on, but like so it makes it so that the mouth movements are way more like they're doing it exactly to what the cast was doing, which also makes it, I guess, harder to dub probably, because which I didn't watch the dub version. I watched the subtitle version because I'm not going to watch the dub version. That sounds terrible, if anything, pretty much. But like, I mean, you know, yeah.
If you have dyslexia or something that keeps you from being able to read the dubbed version, the non-dubbed version, of course. But like, this is interesting because it's the first time in Japan that anime has done drawing itself to the lip motion, which is not so interesting to Americans because we started doing that with Mickey Mouse and our original Snow White. Not all the scenes, but the major scenes. So this is like culturally very important for them. So they do the dialogue, but then there's a completely different aspect where they have the Akira code, which is the music. So somebody said to me, is Akira just basically a giant anime music video? And yes and no. Because it was designed to be set around its music, the tempo, everything hits so perfectly that it's so stunning even to today. And I've seen music videos that don't bother to set themselves to the music. So, you know.
Oh no, I've had people.
Music video.
I've had people attempt to direct videos for me that don't do that, and I'd be like, all right, here's what we got to do. There's a couple things we're doing.
As a musician, what do you feel about that?
Too soon.
As a musician, what do you feel about the way that this movie plays out for you? Do you really feel the measures, the bars, the hits, the emphases?
Well, it's so when there's care and attention put into something like that, you notice. And when there isn't any put into it, you also notice. And most things are like in the middle. But this is definitely an example, and I had kind of forgotten that I was because now, I mean, it's been many years since I've seen it, and, you know, since then, like, I score stuff now, right? Like, and obviously, I've written a million more songs and, like, you know, put out a bunch more records and stuff, so I pay way more attention to that kind of thing, and it's more noticeable to me when things are lazy, and when things are just like, I'll just throw a thing in there so we can have a thing, and it's so intrinsic to, like, every piece of it is just like interlocked in such a thoughtful way that like I mean, I'm sure the score is great on its own, but it's so interweaved with the visuals, which we really hadn't seen anything like that at the time. And I think I got a little spoiled because this is the first anime I ever saw.
You son of a bitch, yes, but it was also my first anime, so fuck
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah. But I was like, oh wow, this is great. And then like I think I was sort of like chasing that high for a long time. And there's like Ghost in the Shell is really good. There's ones that are good. Don't get me wrong,
Cowboy
but like
Bebop, great.
Cowboy Bebop's amazing. But like as far as just the overall presentation of just like the unified form, the music, the visuals, the voices, the character work, all that stuff, like it's there's really nothing like it. And that's why almost, first of all, impossible to find. I'm going to mention it because I thought it was a funny thing we both saw in the comments. Like you tried to search for Akira. Do you mean Akira Kurosawa? Well, yes, normally I would mean that. Yes, that's a normal thing to think that I'd be searching for. But no, this time I do not mean that.
I think it's impossible for your algorithm to find because it's on Crunchyroll, and if you're an anime fan, like that is the number. That's like the Hulu of animated Japanese.
And I had never heard of it, and I had to like download an app and like cast it. I had to like freaking like I was sitting here splitting the atom trying to watch this movie. Meanwhile, I have it on VHS about like 5 feet that way, but I don't have a VCR though. Is the problem.
Yeah.
But it's something where it makes me wonder about its legacy as a foundational film, because I think this is a few films that it transcends the genre as well as perfectly embodies it. And but I know how that works sometimes. Look at rap music, right? Rap music has like no sense of history whatsoever. It's like what happened like last year, maybe, and more like last week. And I just wonder if, obviously it has. People are very excited to talk about it and get in the comments section about it. Hopefully people are interested in this episode and the conversation as well. But it just makes me wonder, like, do the kids know about Akira? I don't know, because I feel like it hasn't aged, even though technically speaking, this is in the past. It's 2019. I don't think it's like aged that badly.
A great question, because I feel like Crunchyroll is really something that a lot of younger people use. And in the animated fandom, there is quite a knowledge of its own history. So maybe outside of that particular sphere, it feels like there isn't that sort of knowledge base. But like when you get welcomed into anime communities, almost the first thing you're going to be given is Akira or say Ghost in the Shell, just to kind of like start you off. And I don't want to say that like there's no history within this fandom, especially when it comes to this particular piece.
Right, and to be clear, it's not a fandom I actively participate in. So I'm not saying that like I'm like judging a thing that I know about. I'm just saying that I wonder because I think about it in terms of there's that ensemble circle of people with like-minded interests that are sharing things with and to each other, and then there's like the world at large. And I feel like certain things get into the monoculture and certain things don't. And Akira is something I feel like was in the monoculture for a while, fell out, came back, and then fell out again.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of it's interesting because I've never been like an anime series person, right? But like I've as a kid was a huge Miyazaki fan. Like love My Name is Totoro, love Kiki's Delivery Service, which is the same lead artist that did all of the stuff for here, would go on to do all of the studio stuff. So there's a intrinsic knowledge from a lot of everybody I grew up with, at least that I hung out with, like knowing all the Miyazaki films and like being really into that. And I feel like that deserves like Akira, which I haven't seen all. I mean, I've seen the scene, like I've seen like the Akira slide, I've seen like scenes from it, never seen the entirety of it. And I feel like all those Miyazaki films owe 100% of what they ended up doing to this, right? Like at least the influence it's had on.
I think that's smart because I think you're right that if there is anything with a remotely a monoculture style influence, it's Miyazaki at this point.
Yeah.
If there is, which is what's a monoculture now, that everything's like atomized, but.
And he had the same exact problem where his first film was so badly handled and re-edited and taken away from him that he passed that rule saying, I get full creative control. I'm making my own studio. He had the same exact thing that happened to Otomo. It happens to a lot of anime creators.
Also, The Cure, the band The Cure. That's another one. Like you can the entire thing that we know of as The Cure is because the autonomy was taken away from them in their first album. A bunch of decisions were made without their knowledge, and Robert Smith decided to go not just control enthusiasts but full on with all of it. And like that's interesting how like great art empires. Can be built by like early overreach and sort of like pseudo tragedy. from the artist.
Yeah, I would be curious to ask in the comments, anybody who's listening to this, if you are younger, say a guy 25 or younger, anything, just tell us what your general idea. Do you know Akira? Does this feel old to you? Does it feel new to you? I'm super curious because you're right, it is in the zeitgeist, but not nearly as much as say Miyazaki was. I kind of is that's the anime that I think now people are cutting their teeth on, as opposed to when say Conan and I were learning and it was like, yeah, try Akira.
Yeah, I think for films, right? Because I think that there's a big gap between like the films that are something like Miyazaki, who I don't think that as many. I mean, a lot of films that come out, but like a lot of them end up becoming anime series, and there are a lot of people who are really, really, really into watching anime series. I'm not really into watching any kind of series at all, so like that's kind of how how I got into like something like a Miyazaki film, which I could sit there and watch like all the way through, rather than kind of watching episodes of something. Which like growing up, like I watched Naruto and stuff like that, but it's not like I never got deep into it. And I think some of it is just the amount of there's just too much when it comes to series for me. Like there's like I remember watching Naruto and I was on episode like 120, and I was like, I'm so deep into this, and I'm not like.
Plus, it's completely unfair what happens to American animes coming over from Japan. Like Macross Plus is a combination of different. We get it cut over in different things. Our Sailor Moon is not the original Sailor Moon, so like they make it even larger than it was intended to be originally by jamming in other series and telling you it's just a continuation of the story.
Right. Like Robotech. Robotech was a thing that actually American audiences did know about, myself inclusive. But like it was just sort of all we knew was like, wow, those vehicles look cool. Like I didn't like know any like I honestly barely understood it was from Japan. I was just like, oh, that's I want one of those toys, which is the thing you're supposed to say when you're a kid.
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers is a live action version of this. It's just
Voltron. I mean, like, but that's like what we've been exposed to, which is sort of like, for lack of a better term, cartoons that worked as toy delivery systems, right?
In the United States,
in the United States, where it was like, oh yeah, these kids will eat this up, and I think that it's notable because this was first of all, it feels like a movie because it's a movie, and. One of the first things I posted this on I'm not going to say which one. You could probably guess one of the social media platforms. Oh, have you read the manga? Yeah, man, I read the manga. Like I know that it's different. We're talking about the movie though. Like we're not like, but people are like excited to talk about it because there are differences, and it is something where the movie, and I think it's a rare time where the movie can transcend, even while making some notable changes. Because at the time the manga wasn't even over yet, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
I mean, it was still going.
So he finished.
It was like a George R.R. Martin situation.
Yeah, he finished the manga in the 90s, and George. But he finished the manga in the 90s, and this movie he was developing it in 87, 88, and then it came out in America in 89, which we had that 1 year gap. But Marvel jumped on the manga with with Image Comics, and it was like at the same time they kind of released it was like one of their first. Which I kind of find it fascinating. They decided to make the full color version of the manga, which obviously they were doing it in magazines in Japan. So
it's newsprint. That's the style of
But like that's the first manga that all these people in America got exposed to in English, right? Because I'm sure there's plenty of Japanese kids that were bringing over manga, to read here in Japanese. But like the first full color, full print English manga, really, like one of them at least, was Marvel Comics putting out Akira, and it's like and it was designed to like go along with the movie coming out, but of course it wasn't over yet, and he was kind of rushing to figure out like, all right, well, how much do I want to put in here? I only have 2 hours. I'm trying to condense the story down, and I don't know how it ends.
Right.
But he also said that he made a very distinct choice to make the movie full and one story, because he was given the option to do the sequel based on what would be the rest of the manga, and he wanted them to be different stories, distinctly different, because he felt that the manga had the ability to tell the story that story tells in a way that he couldn't with the constraints of the limit of film, and he wanted to tell a good complete story in the film. He could have made the sequel. He chose not to. I love that.
Which is so smart, and that's the kind of restraint you just never see these days. But because I remember I was a VHS thing. I wasn't even in high school yet. Like I was like in junior high, and I saw the Akira VHS, just like the one that I have now, that had like Kaneda like going towards the motorcycle. And you're like, what is this? What is this? And like I had no idea, but I was just starting to get into like, real sicko shit at the time too. And so I was like over the moon once I saw it, but like I didn't have anybody be like, "Oh, you really need to check out Akira." I was just like, "Oh, that looks cool. I'll check that out." That looks like it's not going to be boring.
And boy, it was not.
Yeah.
I find Otomo's story kind of like really, really, really interesting as he's working on this, because he goes from, he was really struggling. He was 26 when he started, I believe, when he started writing Akira, but he had already been doing a whole bunch of different like stuff. And he was doing the story Fireball, which was, freedom fighters, like, and it was in 1979, at the same time they had like the Mujahideen. So it was like freedom fighters with psychic powers, but he wasn't like, he wasn't trained enough, I guess, to have like put the whole story out, right? Like, so he's doing it one by one, and then by the time he got to the ending, he's like, I don't know what the fuck I want to do with this ending, and just kind of gave it a hack ending, and he really regretted that. So then he did his next one, and it was like the child's dream or whatever. Like he was doing that, and then he's like, it's an old man and a young kid with psychic powers. Then he got bored of that, and Akira came out of his like deep frustration with that process. And then I think a year after he started Akira, they asked him to do General Wars. He, as a character development person, which he'd never done animated stuff before. He only had done comic or manga at that point. Like he was only drawing by himself. And so he was thrown into this world where there was this huge team, and he's suddenly working with this huge team, and they're putting together this project, and it's not going well. And they come out with this thing that like everyone had hacked to pieces pretty much. And it was something that he was like a huge fan of as a kid, and they knew that. And that's why they invited him on there. And he's like, yeah, I need to like take full creative control if we ever do this. And he wasn't planning to ever do this as a movie, but like he's like, as soon as they're like, hey, do you want to do an Akira movie? He's like, yeah, but I can't have General Wars happen to me again. Like,
right. It is the perfect time to do Akira. Like Conan, you're saying it's the late 80s. You're experiencing this period in time where there's kind of like this post-Cold War thing. And if Japan, of all people, can make a comment on what it is like to fear a giant bomb, this is the time, and Americans are going to resonate. I think that's part of why when Akira comes over to the United States, the American audience, despite it being set in Tokyo, so deeply Japanese, they still really resonate with the concept of like, what if the person who is controlling the bomb, controlling this, is as emotionally unstable as a teenager?
Right. And again, like I mentioned earlier on, I think that's key because that's the first time we saw that in media. Like that had not, it's not that there hadn't been like wayward kids, like, the bad seed or whatever, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about somebody that has the powers of a Superman and should probably not have those powers, and what they will do, not out of nefarious intent because they're going to sit there and do evil, but because they're just kind of self-involved and, maybe raging full of hormones.
Not fully developed.
Not to fully develop. And it's so key because, again, that's now a story that we're so used to seeing that it seems almost commonplace. But it was absolutely not at the time. There was nothing like it. Nothing.
Especially with that comment of like, oh, we don't want women to be the president because would you want someone who's on their menstrual cycle to have their finger on the button? Like we have this constant like, oh, if they're hormonal. I'm like, well, who's more hormonal than a woman on their period? Teenagers.
Yeah, exactly. No joke, right?
Well, and there's the whole aspect of it that's like these scientists that are like, oh, don't worry, we can control it. Like we have the control. Yeah. And of course they don't. They don't have the control. They never had the control. They're dealing with teenagers.
Yeah, exactly. How would you ever? But also, it's important to remember, and I love that this is coming right through Brazil, because there were far fewer examples of dystopian sci-fi at the time that hit in that way. So this was something where it was almost like shorthand. Like for me, it was the equivalent of seeing someone with like a Sonic Youth shirt or something. Like, oh, we probably have a lot of things in common. Like where you just know at a glance if somebody's into that like, oh, hell yeah, like you're my kind of people. And it's so hard to describe that now because we live in such a balkanized and atomized culture that it's easy for anyone to kind of be like, I know a bit about this and I know a bit about that, and I know I don't have any deep intrinsic understanding. Whereas what's the word? Otaku, right? Otaku, where someone would become a knowledge holder of, extreme knowledge holder, deep and lasting, that took years and years to research. And now everyone's able to do that in like 5 minutes on the internet. And that was just not a thing. So if you met someone that was really into, when I was in high school, met someone that was really into David Cronenberg, like, oh my God, yeah, let's talk, let's hang out, let's do stuff. Clearly you're a freak like me. If you met someone who's really into David Lynch or so on and so on, all these characteristics that are from outsider art, that Akira, as much as it was a big popular thing, was outsider art in that way, where it was something like, should I be watching this? like, does anybody know that you can just get this at the video store?
Yeah.
I think it's also interesting, like the fact that it transcended so well into American culture as like one of the first big kind of manga / anime things to really do that. And there's like the Godzilla theory that you think about, right? Where when Godzilla came to America, they had to cut it up so much that Americans didn't feel like they were to blame for dropping the bomb on Japan. And I think it's interesting that this is kind of within its own world, like Neo Tokyo is its own thing, and you come to find out that they pushed and created this weapon that they couldn't control, and it's like there's no. It's able to say what it's saying as a social and political commentary about scientific experimentation gone wrong, about that mindset, fully consuming everything, about war fully consuming everything, without necessarily making like us feel like, hey, remember when you dropped that bomb on us? Like,
right, and in a very different way that Godzilla did, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. But just real quick from the comments, Conan's absolutely right. I would wear my Ein Sword Neubauten t-shirt to find friends. Totally. And that was the thing of culture. I also bring that up because Alexander Haka of Neubauten was on Protonic Reversal on Monday, and that's in the Patreon right now. So, but for Haka Di Picciotto, which is his band with his wife, Danielle Picciotto. But Neubauten shout out. Neubauten was a good, like, okay, you're a freak. I know you're my kind of freak if I see that.
Forrest, you're right. The only direct full reference to the bomb, to an atomic bomb or anything that would make Americans feel bad, is the tank that Akira is in matches exactly the atomic bomb that we dropped on Japan. It's a graphic match for that. But like, it's so subtle that it's like, I don't need to feel super bad. Japan did this to themselves.
Yeah. Well, and that's obviously like not the point that they're making, but I do think that like not having like, oh, I'm a big American and I'm gonna drop a bomb on, like, you know what I mean, like having it be within its own kind of culture and universe gives us enough distance to be like, oh, well, they're not talking about us, like they're talking about
they must be talking about some other worldwide superpower that drops atomic bombs.
Yes. Russia, something like that. I don't know.
There's also like the Tetsuo character. It's fascinating, like looking at like Imperial Japan, like before the war, and that kind of mentality where both you've been colonized and you've been beat up and you've been really knocked around, right? Like by Britain and by America but at the same time, you're gaining power, and you like it might be kind of in a backwards way, but you're gaining enough power that you can actually challenge these people that have kind of beaten you down, and that kind of almost like rabid mentality that comes out of that when you finally realize you can exercise that power. And like that, like the Tetsuo character feels like it's an amalgamation of, number one, like just masculinity in general, but also that mindset that's like, hey, I've been kicked around so much. Yeah. That like, now that I have power, like I'm going to absolutely destroy anything in my path. And it's like, I feel like that works on multiple levels.
Yeah, it definitely feels like an allegory for maybe feudalist Japan and how they might have gotten swept up into what was the Second World War. Yeah, interesting.
And also, like you mentioned,
Germany after the war, where they're like beat up and they have to still deal with that. Yeah.
Right, you mentioned Mishima in the intro too, which if anyone's interested, they could check out the very classic episode, Mishima: Life in 4 Chapters by Paul Schrader, about the actual character Mishima. Who, like it's the same sort of thing of just this weird. Well, in that case, it's pining for like bringing the emperor back, which is like a whole separate. And everyone's like, "Oh no, okay, guess I'll die." Like literally, but it's an amazing movie.
Channeling his own like sexuality and feelings about that, and his own inadequacies into this like fascist ideology. That I don't know. Mishima blew me away in that movie. Like,
it's an incredible movie. That's one I would talk about that one like every month if we could, and we would still find something to discuss. Matt in the comments, I find the character of the general very interesting. He's quite sympathetic and all the more dangerous for it. Absolutely.
Oh my god. Absolutely. I find it so interesting. Some of the lines that the general delivers is not what you would expect of someone who is strictly militaristic. Like he tells the scientists at the beginning, like, if this gets out of control, you got to kill him right away. Like the balance in that character, instead of making it like we see in a lot of cartoons where characters are broad strokes of an idea, these feel human. And that is another reason why this does not need to be live action. Side note, there was a period of time where Samuel L. Jackson was supposed to be the general in one of the live action remakes. And I think about that a lot. I think he might have been a good general.
Well, I mean, one could argue that his version of Nick Fury is sort of like that vibe, right? You know?
There's a scene where he's I forget the names of the three aspers, but Kyako Koto or something, like the girl, like the psychic girl, right? Like there's a scene where she's telling her dream about everyone getting crushed by Akira and everything, you know, like the city falling and blood being spilled throughout the streets of the city. But he's like holding her hand, and there's like a very tender affection to that. And then you see that kind of mirrored in the fact that the three kids clearly feel like their home is that center, like whether that's through deeply depraved scientific experimentation and medication that, you know, kind of controls their powers and they're, you know, stuck being children. So there still is that feeling that they're you don't feel like those kids have been like abused in that kind of sense, right? Like you feel like those kids, this is their home and everything that's happening within that is within their home, and they can make decisions on their own, but like it's not as it's not like, oh, these are the bad guys, these are the good guys, and they're doing this. Like there's a moral ambiguity about all of it, I think.
Yeah, there's almost like if you train a baby elephant with chains, when it gets older, you don't even need to use the chains because it won't even try and get away. And we know that Akira happened 17 years ago is when he went off. So that means that those children, they're the numbers before Akira is 28, they're 26, 7, 25. Those would be even longer than that. So they're children at least 17 years ago when this started. Yeah. So like it's almost like what you would expect bodies to look like in the blast or wake of a nuclear event. I was watching a video about Hiroshima recently. There's a great Netflix documentary, The Turning Point, about the Cold War, and it goes back to start in Japan. And I was noticing how much those visuals, I was like, oh, I can see why they made the children look like this.
Yeah. The palette, they're pallid. They have a far more pallid and you know, like
I was gonna make a Shades of Grey joke, but the moment passed. Yeah.
I mean, they're at least in their 20s, so like the children. That's why they're
who are all like
stable.
Yeah, and there is something deeply unsettling. Well, there is the syndrome like that in reality where it's like a child, but they look like they're old. I forget what it's called.
Progeria.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. But it's you know, it makes sense in the context of the story. And it's also, you know, we're introduced to them. Like you see that, you know, great scene where you have the, you know, it seems like are these like dancing pink elephants? What's happening here? Like, you know, they're going up these, you know, and there's the three sort of avatars of them.
That is very Fantasia, yeah.
And then you have and so we're trained to be like, you're kind of like, oh, is he tripping balls? What's happening right now? And then you see like the big one shows up, like the ones that are formed of smaller things. Which, by the way, that's may have existed somewhere else. First time I ever saw it, of like, here's a thing formed of other things that is like menacing bare face and like crazy. And then, but when he dispels them by using the power, like, and you'd be like, oh, there's like a person there, but it's like, is that a kid or an old person? Like, what am I looking at? Like, who is that? Like, it's almost like more worse. Yeah, it's exactly. It's somehow it is actually worse. Yeah, like you're like, I was already creeped out, and now I'm really creeped out. Okay, cool.
Go back to the fake bear with milk, please.
Can we bring the monster bear back? Thank you.
When you look at like the synopsis, right, and like people writing up the plot of the movie, it's like those are obviously like the three toys or the three kids that are coming into his room to assassinate him at night, but he's tripping so hard because of, you know, being put on the medication and like the hallucinogenic effects of that, and the psychic power, like is a duel between psychic powers, is like their assassination becomes like this fever dream. And like once you like look into that, it's like, holy shit, like now I see it. Like you can watch it again and see what's going on within that scene, but it's like Jesus Christ, this is blowing my brain out. Like,
well, because especially first time when you don't know, like, what in the name of anything is going on right now? Like, I don't understand. Like, because you don't know, is this a dream? Is he? you're like
That's
this.
So fascinating, and when it breaks, you can see that stuff has broken. So part of it was real enough to disturb the room, but the wall turning into Legos wasn't real. So the amount of that's Satoshi Kon. That's where anime is its best, when it's trying to break through reality in a way that it would cost so much special effects to do this and make it feel believable. And like, God, it's so good.
I remember being sick as a kid, and I was sick a lot as a kid, and having a fever though, and things really do, like, they get bigger. Like, things in your room, they get bigger. The shadows move in a certain way. Like, I remember having like these really trippy kind of fever dreams when I was really sick as a kid that feel like that scene. Like, it feels like that sequence in a way. Like, you have like a stuffed animal, but then because of the shadows and because of whatever's going on, you're like sick brain that's frying in your head. You know what I mean? Like, it's like it's like your thing is huge, and then like you almost can't even look at that thing again after that because it's like you get flashbacks. Like,
I remember what you did. God damn it!
I had a fever of 103, and my friends tried to make me watch Spirited Away. And like, anytime I watch Spirited Away, I feel like I have the flu. I wrapped myself in a green blanket and tried to swim away, saying that I was a mermaid. Like, I was gone.
Wow. All right.
I suggest watching Spirited Away that way. Do it.
10 out of 10 would watch again.
I was so I remember this distinctly. I remember like adults turning into pigs, and then I don't know why, because I read Animal Farm when I was really young, and there's a certain other thing to that, but like the adults turning into pigs, I remember vividly. It kind of scarred my brain for a bit after watching it, and I was like, can we do that? Can we transform into like pigs? Like, what is this telling me? Like,
it's too vivid.
So we're talking about a lot of like really key elements, and again, like what do people remember? What do people remember about this movie? And certainly, is that the milk emoji? Good.
Yeah.
They very well done. And there's a lots of crazy iconic visuals, but I think that it's disingenuous to not give some credence to the first third of this movie, which is sort of like almost akin to the Warriors.
Yeah,
to a certain degree,
Fast and
right?
Furious. It's like Neo Tokyo Drift.
Sure. I don't. Yeah.
All right, that was a solid one.
Yeah.
Thank you. He doesn't know that that's not actually the movie. He thinks the title of the movie might be Neo Tokyo Drift. It's just Tokyo Drift.
Maybe. Sure. Yeah.
But
I mean, I ain't watching that shit. No, but I was thinking about just like the classic, like The Wild One, or like something along those lines, like where it's just like these classic films, like the kids on the motorcycles, right? That's a classic rebel thing. And there's so many, Wild Angels. I'm trying to think of like there's so many of them. Some of them which are terrible. But like having that, but like the futuristic version. First time I ever saw that. Where it's like, well, of course that would still exist. Why would that go away as a cultural construct? And then you also have the Warriors element of like there's warring gangs, and there's just like it's this thing that happens.
Yeah, and like, or something like almost like Mad Max to it, right? Like,
sure,
that level of like that, but that vision of dystopia, where it's like society has regressed to the point where because nobody can keep order, there's just these like you're better off if you're in a gang, like these roving biker gangs that.
Well, you point out something that is actually why I think this movie would hit more now with young people than ever before, because these kids who are like 13, 15, the group age range is a little bit between 16 and 13. They are supposed to be going to school. They're not really going to school because the future of the world is so shit. There is no hope. It is such nihilism has overtaken them. Why would they go to school? To get what jobs? There's no fucking world left. And there was just an article I read in NPR about 3 days ago saying that they're having an unprecedented inability to get children to go to school because after COVID, their parents kind of realized how unimportant it really is. And so they're not really policing it anymore. And the kids don't really care about going to school because what the fuck, there might not even be a world if we set it on fire in 5 more days. So like that amount of like anger and nihilism.
So I'm sorry that I didn't invoke Fast and the Furious, but like the Wild One, like there's all that stuff, but it's the 1953 version of that, right? Mm-hmm. So this is like that same principle that again it showed up again in 60s, 70s, 80s, et cetera, et cetera. But this one was applied with sort of like Blade Runner aesthetics to it, and that was something that was brand new at the time. And now of course, like, well, yeah, of course they're gonna have hover bikes or whatever the hell they're doing, you know. Of course, yeah.
Yeah, but kids today don't really care about biker gangs. It's not cool anymore. What will be grabbed onto is the concept of why these kids have joined a biker gang, like just or why people are so interested in the CEO assassination, like this chaos that people want to grab onto that because everything's meaningless right now to them, and they want something.
But what they also care about is the cultural iconography of it, which is carried forward from all those earlier eras, but like just comes out in the way of, you know, like for instance, me looking at the VHS and seeing like, oh, there's a cool looking dude in a red jacket walking towards a cool looking motorcycle. I wonder what this movie is about. Is it about motorcycles? Well, not really. No, it's about a lot of stuff. But like, it's that iconography is always going to be, you know, whatever form it happens to take place is always going to be interesting, because as much as we goof on, you know, and as well we should, the Fast and the Furious world, because like, you know, it's about family. All right, well, yeah, we get it. Why don't you say it 5,000 more times? We understand. But like,
and Kaneda and Tetsuo are kind of like brothers, so it is about
but that's what I'm saying, is that culturally, when you're in a situation where people are disenfranchised, where people are not given opportunity, et cetera, they're going to try to find their own family. They're going to try and find their own culture. They're going to find meaning within their diasporas, within their own groups. And this is a great example of that, actually predating some of the stuff that's actually happened, just as per normal with like dystopian movies. Not exactly the way it's actually happened, but like, you know, enough that it's notable.
Yeah, I find, like, I mean, like, kind of reading between the lines of this movie too, right? Like, the reason that they're a biker gang is that they're selling, like, and the reason they have the pills on the back is that they're selling those pills to people within the city, and they go around from place to place, and like, so they're like a roving gang of kind of drug dealers that are also kind of college students, but like even the college dorm, when you go inside of it, right? Like, you see it.
It's not college dorm. It's an orphanarium.
Yeah. But they're living in. I thought they were living at the college, or they're living near.
It's a school school for children who don't have parents, so they're all 16.
Yeah,
and younger.
All right.
That's why they say for people under 15, the rules are really hard.
Yeah, it seems to be like almost like a collective, almost, right? Like, you never see like adult supervision. You see it when they're kids. You see adult supervision, obviously, but when they're adults, you don't see any kind of adults. You just see a bunch of kids kind of. Well, I mean, when they're teenagers, like, but like when they're teenagers, you see kind of just this place where all the kids are kind of just squatting, like in like what looks like a giant gymnasium kind of thing.
But that comes back to like the whole thing of like them. The only people they can trust are their fellow, you know, people in their MC, right? Like like that's their only family, the only family that they know, and a family is going to be a family in all the myriads of ways, including of which, you know, there's a pecking order, and Tetsuo is not at the top of that pecking order, and hence why he steals the motorcycle and they nearly both get murked almost immediately. Like, it's, you know, it's pretty harrowing if you stop and think about them as actual people.
There's also
as children who are murdering people on bikes. Yeah.
Again, going back to the Warriors, which, you know, that obviously happened before, but that was like probably one of the better examples of it. Yeah.
They predated the Juggalos by having them be the clowns.
Right, exactly.
There's like
I would have given you good money to do that makeup today for us.
Oh man, yeah.
There's like a timeless quality though. I remember when we were in Minneapolis, they were selling Faygo at the.
Yeah. No,
did you try it? Is it good? I've never had it.
I've tried it when my friend had it a while back. I just remember it as being soda. But there's like this thing that I remember being a kid and being like a high school kid. You know what I mean? Like being kind of 13, 14 and living in a town with a college, right? Like every time the cops stop you, or like, you know, you get harassed because you're out late or whatever, and you're just kind of hanging out, and they're like, oh, here's a bunch of teenagers hanging out, let's ask them what the fuck they're doing. You're like, oh, I'm a university student. And it's funny that like in this movie, right, like they pull that as soon as the cops get them. They're like, oh, I'm a university student, I'm at Tokyo University.
Whatever, that makes sense, that checks out. But I think the back third of this movie doesn't work if you don't have the world building of that first third.
No,
which is great, because you see those great visuals One of the funniest lines is, "It's Mr. Canada to you." What is he, 15, 16?
That's what's
yeah,
so
exactly.
freaking hilarious. And even more funny, the guy who's like,
really?
I'm 25, I'm not even married.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a hard 25 too, by the way.
They didn't predict would happen because the younger generations are aging super fast. So that's another prescient thing from Akira.
But yeah, but I want to bring home the point that all the world building you get of like just seeing the landscapes and like seeing like the music interacting with the characters moving through the landscape, and without anyone giving you like some lame voiceover of like the year is 2019, blah 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 this and that. All you get is, first of all, the first thing you see is a nuclear explosion. And it's like Tokyo was destroyed. It was like, whoa, we're starting with this? I mean, it's like within the first like 3 seconds of the movie, like it's out of the gate. But then that's the only exposition you get. Everything else is just shown to you. And that works because there's such an elegance with how the movie is presented, with the animation techniques, again, the melding with the music and things like that, that if you don't have all that stuff where they're not doing anything extraordinary, really, you know, they're just running around and you know, getting into fights and doing, you know, like MC
Maybe
stuff.
murder. Maybe like casual murder, like
a little murder is a treat. Yeah. Sure. But it's as it's going to say, like, I don't think it feels as much of a payoff without that build up in the beginning.
And I think that like some people might argue that the film is a little long and that beginning part could be cut, and I disagree with that entirely. Ooh. I find that it's a nice slow lead up, and the last 30 minutes collapse on themselves particularly hard, and I kind of enjoy that sort of pacing. But I think you need that bit world building at the beginning, particularly.
Well, otherwise, why do you care about these dudes' relationship? Okay, they're friends, and but they kind of don't like each other too. And all right, who gives a damn? You have to see it's complicated.
Yeah, and they're like friends in the way that brothers are friends, right? Where at any moment they can snap on each other, and it's but this was at the time the most expensive feature length anime they ever created, and it was 700 million yen. Or like between $5 and $10 million, like US dollars, and a lot of that went into creating that world building. Like a lot of that went into doing everything they could to create Neo Tokyo as like a lived-in space. And I think, I mean, it really pops. But like the idea of being like, oh well, they could have cut that part. It's like, well, like then you're just kind of cutting what they spent the majority of the budget on. Like,
to build this world so that when you get to the fireworks factory and things start exploding, you give a damn.
Yes, particularly the idea that there's like this mice and men sort of thing where like when Kaneda has to make the decision to try and kill Tetsuo, that is an important. He's not just a hero. That's not what he wants to have do. And the reason again why I think this is so successful as an anime is a editing technique that you can see heavily in Satoshi Kon's work. I know that people were talking in the chats about watching Perfect Blue recently. It's amazing. I'm so glad you finally watched it. It is a hard watch. Know what it's about before you watch it. Is that anime can do a thing where it can sell an idea in less frames than live action. So it can take like 40 frames for me to take something and put it in my pocket, but it only takes 4 frames in an animation for me to take something and put it in my pocket. So they're like, to say that you need to crunch Akira is like, no, you don't even realize how dense each of these frames are, and they're even including more frames than they should be.
Yeah, I can name you like 100 other movies that you should crunch first before you even start thinking about touching Akira, dude.
Which I was thinking about you when I was watching there's the long interview. I was watching like the hour-long interview that that they did while putting the movie together, and he was talking about like Katsuhiro Otomo, right? Like he was talking about like 2 hours. He's like 2 hours. Like you have to put so much into it, and it's really not that much time, but it is a long time, and I don't want to have it be more than 2 hours. And I was thinking about like even he knew in like 1988, you don't want to have it be your movie be too long, but he's like
exactly. Put him on blast, dude. Put him on blast, please.
So I wanted to talk about the music, and I know we touched on it briefly, but I have this clip that I found where he's talking about the music process for this.
Oh, fantastic. Oh man, look at that computer. Awesome.
そうですね、コンピューターグラフィックっていうものを使っ た理由っていうのがさっき言いましたようにその非常にもっとそのアニメーションだけじゃなくてもっとその映像的にいろんなものを入れたかったということですね。
成長の速度、今回も初めてのものです。
世界がその未来の東京っていうことですんで、かなり本当は音もう少しね凝りたかったんですけどもね、シンクラビアなんてやっぱりいいんじゃないですかね。でもあの当時だからアキラが最初ぐらいですからね。ですから僕もよくそのシンクラビアっていうものをそんなにね理解してなかったというのもありますけどね。最初に山城組のブルガリアンボイスというのレコードがありまして、ちょっとタイトルは覚えてないんですけど、それを前に聞いてたのと、それとあとその後にケチャをやってまして、合唱なんですよね、どっちも合唱ですけど、それと、非常にその1枚のレコードを非常に組曲風に作るんですよね。その1曲だけをその作って LP を作るというよりは、トータルのアルバムを作っていたということで、そのなんでしょうね、そういう広がりがあるんですよね、音楽の世界にね。ただ単にその楽曲を作っておしまいっていうことじゃなくて、非常によくその構成をしたりしてましたんでね。それとあとやっぱり合唱を使いたかったなっていうのがありましたね。合唱をね使いたかったんですよ、確か。それでそういうふうに考えるともう山城組だなっていうね、それとあともっと山城組っていうのはすごいいろんな音楽を本当にいろんな音楽をやるんですよね。確かにブルガリアンボイスをやったりケチャをやったり、それに、ロックの音楽もやったり、あと邦楽もやってましたからね。非常にごったになんですよね。それが非常に僕はその東京のイメージに近いなと思いましたね。ただ単にその、クラシックのスコアを書くっていうことじゃなくて、もっとその東京をイメージしたそのなんていうかな、そういう音楽の豊かさがないとアキラには持たないかなっていう気がしてたんでね。ただのクラシックと合唱だけじゃダメだっていうふうには思ってたんですよ。それもっとそのエスニックリズムが、僕リズム好きですからね、あれは非常にやっぱりリズムあるんですよね。それは原作もその海外版アメリカ版が出たりヨーロッパ版が出たりしたんですけども、最初から考えてなかったんですよね。別にその海外に向けて作ろうっていうふうには思ってなかったんで、最初はへーっていう感じだったんですけどね。全くその日本人の読者っていうかそういうふうにしか考えてなかったんで、受けるのかなっていうのはちょっと不安ではありましたけど、やっぱりそのなんかみんなが、見てくれて面白いっていうふうに言ってくれましたんでね。それはやっぱりそのブレードランナーだったりそのサイバーパンクだったりするのと同じように、やっぱりそういう世界的になんかそういうイメージっていうのが共通したイメージっていうのがきっとあったんだろうなと思いますけどもね。それがだからその原作のアキラだったりアニメーションのアキラがその海外で受けたっていうのは、そういうイメージがみんな共通していたんじゃないかなっていうふうに思いますけどね。
Dude totally reminds me of Eric Valverde.
Who's that?
That's only for Forrest because the only one that knows who that is. But
I
like,
love
he's
it.
such a chill dude.
The saying like the kind of like low way that he was talking and going like,
Yeah, it's just like kind of it's like
I like the flex of just taking out like a cigarette in your studio in the middle of like the interview.
Yeah,
you start like smoking a cigarette and you're like, they're like not really like making a big deal about it. Like,
music in this goes pretty hard though, and I feel like it's intrinsic to this as it is with Vangelis and Blade Runner too, where it's like you can't really think of one without the other.
Yes, and it's very strange. Like both of those soundtracks are not what you would put to any normal movie ever. Like this has scenes where there are like, and it's the part where someone is running, and it's a real like a hata, almost like deep guttural noise, and it just adds to what you're experiencing in such a way that you almost have to stop and identify it. You're experiencing it.
Well, and it reminds me of all the way back when we talked about Legend, how because there's a Jerry Goldsmith version and there's a Tangerine Dream version, right? And how like certain things can hit so much differently depending on like what's happening with the music, especially when it's considered like something that's like extra rather than intrinsic to the what's happening on the screen, as we discussed. And as I can always tell the difference personally. But of course I can. I'm a freaking musician. Of course I can. But like, but I think people, especially when it doesn't work, can also tell. They just may not know that's why they're mad at it or like, not interested.
And I don't think people understand how important sometimes weirder music is to a thing. Like even Lady Hawk. I watched a version of Lady Hawk where they took out the strange soundtrack and just gave it a totally normal Hollywood soundtrack. And it's weird.
Doesn't work.
It needed it. Yeah. It really needed it.
And look Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Without Yellow's Oh Yeah, like, would that be the same movie? Arguably, no. And that's one of, dude, they were contemporaries of The Residents. Yeah, and like, that's an objectively crazy song, too. But it's
I can't even eat
movie.
gummy bears without thinking of that song. Every time I'm like, they're warm, they're in my pocket. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful.
I think though that there's
it's a dream, by the way. That's the dream.
it might only be since they created like the Dolby surround sound system, right? Like there's the idea that goes between like the older version of like a movie score, and then now there's like a soundscape, and I feel like this is a very early version of something that has like a legitimate soundscape. Like the sounds all sync up to different things on the screen, and like the music and the sounds of the different things. Like there's that Canada theme, not Oh Canada, but the Canada theme. It's kind of, I don't know if it's like a
motif, yeah.
Yeah, and they're going through the city, and it's like that little like part of it, and it's like as they're going through, like it works so perfectly with the because you feel like you're cruising, like you feel like what John Travolta in Pulp Fiction driving around on heroin must have felt like. Well,
because there's movement. The music implies movement, and so it's one of. And again, there are times where somebody can be the right. Can be an amazing musician, but they're the wrong person for the job, right? And that's almost tragic when that happens. And then there's people that's like, oh, this sounds. Where's Zimmer at? Bring him out. Oh, he's busy. Have one of his kids do it. It's like, it's the same stuff in the last 25 movies you did, huh? Great. Yeah. You almost want. Well, I think I said when we did. True Romance, I almost want to dock him credit for that movie because the same stuff he's still using like 30 years later. It's hacky stuff, but we have. I'm sorry. This is.
Did you see you looked at the chats? You got to finish your thought.
I know. How many goddamn episodes? How many episodes of this dumbass show have I done to not know? Don't look at the chat when you're in the middle of a sentence. But no, this is a perfect example, and I don't think it really gets because think with Akira, there's so many things to focus on. There's so many things to focus on, not the least of which, again, we haven't gotten to the fireworks factory yet. But like the use of music, and it is so important that it would fundamentally change the movie to not have that synced up and have it again give that feeling of like you're in a pulsating city, that like something is happening, and like okay, this is you get the feeling of in some cases it makes you feel very constricted and almost like you're enclosed by spaces like with big buildings around you that are unfeeling and things along those lines. And that's great. I mean, that's what you're looking for as a composer, to get those kind of vibes.
Take that out is to like take apart the very structure of the piece of art that it's being made out of. Like this was made, they drew it to the music. So to take the music out is deeply sacrilegious, in my opinion. It also has an aspect of like capoeira to me, the dance fighting, the Brazilian dance fighting, which is that the music sets a tone that lures your enemy into experiencing something. And in these scenes, the music sets your heart rate to the heart rate that is appropriate for the scene, whether or not you get what's going on. And I think that's brilliant in a kind of like Cats way, where like even if you don't speak the language, you're experiencing the movie. And might be another reason why it's one of the first animes to jump over and get us to be like, oh, I get it.
Which, by the way, some facts on all right, I'm gonna try to say it and I'm gonna fail miserably, but Gai no Yamashiragumi is probably terrible, but no, it's his music. It's like a music collective. It's over 100 members in this music collective, and they have different jobs, like in their non-musical life, right? Like journalists, engineers, students, doctors, like they all come.
This
from
is like
things.
Ravenous.
They come together as a collective to build like these musical soundscape projects, and so they were like one of the first people to like combine like traditional folk music. Like I guess it was the gamelan, by the way.
Gamelan,
what I was thinking of. Yeah. So, but like they were the Indonesian
the turtle guy in
gamelan. Gamelan music, right? Combining that with like MIDI synthesizers, like that was one of their big innovations. And like it's over 100 people though, and they're all doing different things in this musical collective, which is why it's like a soundscape and not like not like just a soundtrack, because it's literally a guy conducting like 100 different people.
And they're not typically musicians, which is exactly the soundtrack situation with Ravenous, which is a movie I desperately love. And there seems to be a theme for me where like, I don't like musicians who are musicians, which is a horrible thing to say. People trained, Katie, like the musicians.
I feel personally attacked by that, but okay, I get it.
That's the stupidest thing I've ever said.
It's probably your nightmare though, right? Like just you have like 100 guys that aren't musicians, and you're like, you got to make them play something.
Oh my god! Yeah.
Actually, can I tangent for a second? H. John Benjamin made an album, a free jazz album, where he showed up to record, and he had never
Daredevil.
played. Yeah, he had never played. And it's unintelligibly not free jazz. Like it's good. It's free jazz.
Well, and Sam Cedar almost brought him on as a surprise one of the times that he was on this show, which would have been a pretty good surprise. Yeah. But he dropped that, and we're like, okay, I can't even react to that right now.
He also had H. John Benjamin come on to promote that on Majority.
I heard that was amazing. That was an amazing appearance.
Grilling him on that shit.
He was just busting his balls relentlessly. It was amazing. It was amazing. It was an incredible episode. All time.
I love that H. John Benjamin does the it's the Majority Report whenever they go live. He does their tags for it.
No, but I think back to like the larger point too, and the gamelan and all that stuff. Like it's so. It brings in the mood and ties into the larger overarching themes, and brings out elements of the story that maybe you would not be thinking about if the music was different. Like it's the kind of the thing of like, did you ever see the well, it's pretty classic now, but like at a time it was really new, where hey, let's recut The Shining, but it'll be a heartwarming, father and son getting in touch like picture. All you gotta do is like change the music and like you change the scenes,
editing,
right? yeah, and so context is everything. But there is something where it gives a timeless feel of something like slightly dangerous, but also youthful, and in a situation where there's not a lot of hope. And I'll get across with like a couple notes. And again, it's how you play the notes in the order you put them in, but it does matter a lot.
I also think it's fascinating, like kind of just going on Wikipedia and looking up like a little bit of the stuff about the music. They had the Yamaha DX7 like as one of their big instruments, like before it came out. As like,
how was the chat still talking about Ferris Bueller? By the way, that was like 20 minutes ago. Okay, that's fine.
They had because it's obviously like, it's a Japanese film, and because it's a Japanese music collective, like they had the Yamaha DX7, like the really famous keyboard.
Oh yeah.
They had it like a couple years, like I guess it was a couple years into them doing it, but they had like all the latest like Yamaha technology that they got to work with in the studio working on it. So,
That's so cool.
Yeah. No, and that's something where that would have been like super state of the art at the time too. Like that would have been
you're telling me it's keyboard, but it's electric.
But that's like we were saying. So much of this is him trying to break the rules of anime, break the rules of scoring a movie. It's just like new, bigger, different, and it's amazing how taking all those swings doesn't make it dated. Because you think about stuff like, oh, Jumanji was the first time. I do not watch Jumanji, right? It's a good story, but oh god, those elephants look weird now. Like all of that.
We busted balls on those monkeys so hard when we covered it on the show. It was like, wow, how is this the same? Like this was after Jurassic Park, to be clear. Like what is happening?
I remember watching it as a kid and being like, whoa, this CGI looks so cool. And then you watch it as an adult, it's like this CGI, it's there.
I rented that and the Sphere to test the first DVD player my family ever bought. We're like, let's get Jumanji and the Sphere. And we were like, wow, DVD. Now I'm just like, what were we watching?
I can't remember what I ended up scoring it to, but I took some song and I thought it was really clever when we did our episode, and I put the scene with the monkey shooting out of the car, stealing the car or whatever, like. And I put it to a song. I can't remember what it was.
Slightly bigger budget for Jurassic Park, yeah.
Then what?
Then Jumanji. yeah.
Jumanji Park, It's the crossover.
So the big face-off. So first of all, Tetsuo the Iron Man mentioned in the comments earlier, the movie Tetsuo the Iron Man, which came out about a year after this. Crazy movie. Also, Tetsuo literally means Iron Man, I think, or some derivation thereof in Japanese. But crazy body horror, techno-organic, lots more sex in that one than this. But that's good because these are children in this, so that we would want to see that. But first thing I saw, because I saw Tetsuo the Iron Man way later, I was like, oh, like Akira? Because he's also, it's like he's got the techno-organic arm. By the way, Rob Liefeld totally ripped that off for Cable, by the way, in X-Force. Like, absolutely, completely and utterly ripped that off. But I had never seen that at the time, the techno-organic, like, thing, where it's like, oh, this is, like, technology and, like, organic life, melding in a way that is beyond just like something happening as like a jump scare. This is something that's like intrinsic to this character.
It makes me wonder also, like Tetsuo meaning Iron Man, like did Marvel also think like, look, we're gonna distribute this because it's good, but also like let's get the copyright on the Japanese word pretty much Iron Man, you know what I mean? Like so no
they were not. Let's put it this way. They were not that savvy at that time. Let's look.
Yeah.
That company just. They made good comics, and that was the best thing you could say about them. They could not get their act together for like 15 years.
Stanley is like, put me in Akira. I can be there. I could be.
Yeah, I'll do a cameo.
I do like that backronym, like making that. We'll say that now. Yeah, that's why it was. That
yeah.
way.
Oh yeah. That's why we were worlds within worlds. Definitely.
Absolutely.
No, but like the big face off is like when we think of some like Dark City or something along those lines, where you just have like two characters that are just like, all right, and they're just battling it out in the Olympic arena that's still being built. Okay, that's cool, but we're kind of used to seeing that now, and that's something that we've seen in like lots of different movies where it's just like it's just the big knockdown drag out fight, but like with superpowers.
Yeah, well, and like to give Kaneda credit, right? Like he doesn't even have he just has like his.
He's got a laser. That's all he's got. Yeah, exactly.
I love the line where he's like, "This isn't fair. Come on, come and fight me with your hands." And Tetsuo just laughs at him.
Are you kidding me? No, I'm not going to do that. That's a terrible idea.
That's kind of the situation that armies would be in. We would have guns, and you have a nuclear bomb. What are we going to do? Shoot at you? We might try, but like it feels so unfair, and it really, really is. I think that
I didn't remember as much collateral damage as I remember. I was like, wow, God, when that bridge gets got, I was like, like when they start I did remember this when they shoot at him the first time and they just hit the bystanders, and it was like, oh Jesus Christ, that's
Yeah,
horrible.
there's a lot
they
of
really
collateral
did,
damage in this.
It really did predict so much.
Yeah. Aw, too
This-
real.
every time there's a standoff.
Yeah, exactly.
'Cause I remember we were talking about it with we were talking about it when we talked about Al Pacino being in his standoff and
Dog Day Afternoon, yeah.
yeah, and it's like the whole thing is like we're not like we have to back up because we don't want to kill any civilians, and it's like that would not happen now. Like they just be like, look, if civilians are in the way, this is like pretty much a free fire zone.
The civilians, in a way, it sounds like they were probably also part of it, and we'll just write that in the newspaper when they're dead.
Yeah,
right, exactly.
the only reason
They're
not to kill
agitators.
civilians at this point is the paperwork. Like,
I want to ask you guys a question. The way that this ends is a little bit like the way the substance ends, in as far as like, oops, body horror. Like, how does that hit for you? I know that it's controversial at the end of the substance, and might be part of the reason why I like the ending of the substance is because I like the ending of Akira. But I do like the pivot from these two guys have to pit off to actually what we've created is so goddamn awful that it's just awful for everyone, and it's getting more exponentially awful for everyone.
Did they get a satellite actual Star Wars weapon involved to try to solve the problem? Which is like, again, when you talk about the escalation of how this goes from like, kids running around on motorcycles to like, no, this is actual literal Jewish or not space laser that is shooting like this superpowered entity and who loses his arm, crazy, insane.
Yeah.
But
it's
it's
like
such a ramp
arm.
up. It just keeps going. Yeah, I got this. Now I got a robot arm.
I feel like that's been copied so much in different things too, because I can't even think of like what it like. But I remember like there's something where someone has powers and then they start turning into a hedge, and the hedge fully swallows them up piece by piece because they've gone too far. Like I can't remember off the top of my head.
It feels like Annihilation almost. But
Yeah,
it's not the
Annihilation
same,
too.
yeah.
I don't think that's what I was thinking of, but like
No.
I feel like that whole thing where it's like you hit a certain point with your powers and it starts eating you alive, pretty much, right? Like
Oh, you almost like transcend.
yeah, it's like I feel like that gets done a lot now.
But on the face-off between Kaneda and Tetsuo, like it's so interesting because Tetsuo has all the power in the world, but between the two of them, Kaneda's the guy who has the power in that relationship.
Yeah.
And that's very clear the entire time. And I think that's something that I'm not sure if I caught that the first time. It's like, oh, these just cool dudes battling out in a freaking Olympic arena. Cool, right on. Hope stuff blows up. Don't worry, it will. But I think I was noticing that more. It's like, oh, he has complete command of this situation, even though it's like, dude, you could get like killed 17 different ways in the next 30 seconds.
We can trigger him too, like you know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
It's like you might have powers, but I can hurt your feelings if I really want to.
And that's what makes me think so much of stories like of Mice and Men, or even Old Yeller, where like the character is doing a service to kill something that he loves and is in control of and has been taken care of, but is in its own essence very dangerous. But the control is seemingly in Kaneda's hand, and when it can't be, he has to end it. They need to stop him, because if Tetsuo was in control of himself, total chaos.
Yeah, I think that it also plays on your emotions in a way that you don't expect in something like this with like a giant face-off, where one moment you're feeling like, all right, like you gotta stop this kid, he's a fucking asshole, but then it starts eating him alive. And
he screams for help.
Yeah, sympathy for him, and he's acting being a child again, and then you feel sorry for him. You're like, I feel bad that I just felt like Kaneda should end him. Like, who's like the victim, who's the perpetrator, who's the who, like, he's obviously not in control of himself. So it's like I don't feel like it's necessarily his fault that he's like this, but at the same time he's gone into like rage incel mode, and it's like, all right, well maybe it is his fault that he's like this, and like it plays on your conscience, I think, so much in different ways, and the characters
He crushes Kaori in that explosion. Like Kaneda gets out, but she gets crushed, and it's like really horrific for him.
Yeah. And he feels the pain, and he's like, I feel that pain too. And it's like, do I feel bad for her or you? Or I don't know.
Yeah, I just feel bad that any of it's happening, and that's completely out of control, and it's getting worse by the second.
Couldn't have happened to
war
a normal kid.
Not ever gonna benefit anyone. Doesn't matter.
Nobody
who's involved.
wins. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about that review. I mean, I don't know if you guys.
And you can be as remorseful as you want. All the damage has still been done. Yeah.
I don't know how much you guys remember watching it the first time, but that reveal where it reveals that like they, frog dissected Akira, and he's just pieces and little vials.
It's super offhanded too. Of just like, wait,
Yeah.
they did what now? Like,
yeah. And
That
like,
yeah. For me, I had always I never thought it was going to be a kid. I always thought it was going to be specimens because like there's not the capacity to actually cryogenically freeze. Like in my mind, it was like it would be way more inhumane if they froze a live thing than to take him apart and just freeze his bits, which is like a weird thing to say.
Yeah. I thought it might be like a weapon. Like I thought Akira might be something inanimate. Maybe not necessarily thinking like just in my head. I'm like, well, there's something in there, and it's like
I assumed it was going to be an alien. Is what I assumed it was. Oh, it's just an alien, like a really like kind of tentacles flailing around alien, and yes, people are going to be very quick to point out. I'm sure, like in the manga, you get more backstory of actual Akira, and
I had people point that out in my on my review where I was just reviewing the movie, and one of my friends, like two of my friends from like the bar, they were like, "Oh, well, if you had read the manga, you'd know that Akira's a bad guy." And I was like, "Look, I'm sure he killed a healthcare CEO or two. Like, it'll be fine." So that's just for him.
Now you know how I feel on the Wizard of Oz episode where you guys are like, if you read the next book or if you had seen this movie in the 80s, I was like, I didn't.
I tried very hard to bring it forward on its own merits, but that is one of the hardest movies to do that with.
But it gets so much better the more people work on it, so I can see why you would say that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why we brought out our Yamaha DX7.
So I want to tell you guys a really weird piece of trivia before we go, because it doesn't really fit anywhere. I was saying to Conan that this is actually a Criterion Collection film, but only on Laserdisc, which means that Criterion has this as spine number 151 Laserdisc, but Traffic is their number 151 spine, which feels like really good trivia. If you ever wanted to know if there was a double number on Criterion, it's Akira and Traffic, which are weird movies to put together.
I would not
Yeah.
Ever put those together. Yeah.
In the Akira collective, right? Like, because Japan does this thing where they put all these companies together. Laserdisc was one of the companies in that collective from the beginning, like that put the funding and like distribution together for the movie. So it makes sense that they would do it that way.
Mm.
And also people thought Laserdisc was going to be around.
Yeah.
So
I was fascinated by the pre-scoring thing, and I won't play this whole thing because I grabbed like 7 minutes of it, but this is a few minutes of the pre-scoring part of it.
映画「アキラ」が日本のアニメ界を驚かせたのがプレスコ方式を採用したことだ。
でその時に、哲夫がふっと気がつくのは、要するに一番最初の時にオートバイの事故を起こした時の子供がここにいるんで、それを見てちょっとふっと気がつくんですね、これに。でこれでぐーっとカメラ寄ってきまして、そいつのこの間にインサートカットが入って、一番最初にオートバイがぶつかったあたりの絵が入りまして、でお前はあの時の白いガキじゃないかっていうふうにここで気がつくわけです。でそこに大佐が入って
セリフを先に録音し、その声に合わせて口の動きを作画する極めて贅沢な制作方法なのである。最近のアニメ映画ではコストの関係もあり、ほとんど採用されていない。
その時に横にこうすっぽ抜けちゃうっていう感じなんですね、力がぶつかってた力が。
大友監督自ら演技指導に臨んでいる。みんな真剣な表情だ。そして演技。この演技をもとにして作画された絵がどうなっているのか、プレスコと千賀の様子を合わせて見てみよう。
よーし、揃ったな。殺す気だったのか、この俺を。ふざけた真似しやがって。ぶち殺してやるぜ、ガキども。
よせ。
うるせえ。
なんだ。お前の力はまだ完全ではないんだ。無茶をすると取り返しのつかぬことになるぞ。私たちの指示に従うんだ。
お前たち、俺の頭をどうしやがった。
落ち着くんだ島哲夫。コントロールができないのです。
うわーいて金田、なんでこんなところに。哲夫、大丈夫か？助けに来たぞ。早くしろよバカ、急がないと外の奴らが。
金田君
お前もそこにいたっけな。いいんだよ金田、俺はもうお前に助けてもらわなくてもいいんだよ。これからは俺がお前を助けてやる。そん時はいいな、金ちゃんよ。
セリフの母音に合わせて口の形が設定され作画作業に入る。作画マンは芝居を聞きながら作画をするのである。
アキラ
とこうなる。出演者にフレスコの感想を聞いてみた。
プレスコっていうのは全く初めてでした。で、アメリカとかウォルト・ディズニーのそういうアニメーションではそういうプレスコを使ってるってことは聞いてたんですけれども、実際初めて今回味わってみて、何かとてもラジオドラマ的なんですね。そういう意味ではとても感情移入ができたと思います。一つだけものすごく感動したことがあったんですね。僕がそのプレスコで最初に撮った時にやった通りに口が細かいところまで動いてくれてるんですね。通常のやっぱアニメーションでは普通の撮り方では全く感じられなかったことが僕すごい見てて、はははははははっていうその細かいニュアンスまでも表現してくれてるんですね。僕はこれは素敵だなと思ったんですね。そういうところはものすごい素敵です。
クイックアクションレコーダー、プレスコ方式の秘密兵器だ。フィルムに撮影しなくてもコンピューターの力で出来上がった作画をすぐその場でセリフと口の動きが合っているかをチェックできるのだ。そのチェックの鬼、村田くんのチェックが入るぞ。
普通そのアニメーターが想像の部分でタイミングを取るんですけども、必ずしもそれが要するにベストとは言えないわけですよね。そういうものを機械を使いますとフィルムにしなくても事前にそのチェックができるということで、動画チェックの段階で動画を入れまして、大いに活躍してもらって、それでタイミングを直したり、より完成度の高いものにしていこうということで使ってます。いや、もう画期的なんじゃないですか。要するに普通プレスコで作るってことはしないわけですよね。で口パク3枚でアフレコっていうんですか、その声優さんが合わせて、確かに合うことは合うんですけども、やはりプレスコ撮りできっちりとその一言一言合っているという絵と見比べるともう断然そのプレスコの方がリアルですよね。そういう意味で芝居なんかも入ってますし、久々に長編、劇場作品という感じの作品になると思いますけど。
もうよせ哲夫、殺す気か。うるさい、俺に命令すんな。
近頃のアニメーションっていうものがあまりにも形になりすぎて、要するに作られすぎてるわけですよね。で、決まっちゃってるでしょ。例えば誰なら、ガンダムのあの声ならあの声だとかね、みんな決まっちゃってるし、あんまりその声でキャラクター、要するに、アキラで使ってるキャラクター以前にもキャラクターがついてしまった声はなるべく避けようかなと思ったんですけどね。それで一応15、6歳の子供たちの声なんていうのをねちょっと聞いてみたりすると、ほとんどもう差がないんですよね。差がないっていうか、そのメリハリがなくてみんな同じ声してるんですね。で 丁寧に探せばきっといたのかもしれないけど、なかなか、演技の指導をするとかね、そういうのも時間がないし、まあ一応、あんまりこう聞き慣れないっていうか、そんな感じで選びましたけどね。今回の場合ましてその絵がないんでね、どちらかというと、こっちがだから出してほしいっていうような感じだったんですよね。あんまりこちらからいろんな要求をして、形を作っていくよりは、どちらかといえばそちらの方で出してくれないかっていう方が近かったですけどね。
There you go. That's fascinating.
Yeah, you definitely get a feeling for how much anime kind of stuff was out there in Japan at the time too, right? Like he's like, this is so played out at this point. Like I'm trying to do something new. I'm trying to do something exciting.
Yeah.
I got all these nerds working for me.
And this is kind of the beginning of this digitization in animation. They are at the forefront of that. Which is again why when this hits, people are like, "Whoa, I've never seen anything like this before."
You're telling me there's 50 extra shades?
But it was so cool to get to see the actors doing it, and then like we said, like, oh my god, that looks like Tetsuo. They drew it to match that.
Yeah.
It fits and it feels so real because they are real.
But even like the level of sweat on the kid when he's doing the Tetsuo voice.
He's doing the voice, yeah.
That
get
is
into it.
what I was getting when I was watching the Tetsuo character.
Yeah, you can't fake that.
He's like, he's sweaty and like, he's kind of sweaty and like, you know, just disheveled the entire time. And it's like, now he has powers. He's still sweaty and disheveled, but he also has psychic powers.
But now he has powers, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like same stuff, but. Yeah.
And he's giving a whole performance, and the actor's whole performance is getting animated. That's exciting.
I like the power of computers thing, and it was like, Tetsuo, you may have powers, but I have the power of computers. It's like right. Oh, you're gonna get so fucked up by this one.
And it's also at some point animation studios fell into the I guess we can call it a habit of just like, let's, instead of getting like people that are actually voice actors, let's just get like an A-list celebrity so we can slap their name on the poster and people will watch this. And that has now become the rule, not the exception, which I think is too bad.
Well, I do love the way that Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli is handling that, where like they're so famous, they're basically having actors ask them, "Please, I love your stuff. May I
want to be in it?" Sure.
And they still require a full audition. Like Robert Pattinson's audition to be the Blue Heron in the last one that they did was incredibly thorough, and it was almost like he got it because they loved what he did versus they know who he was, and that's
right.
Clutch. Yeah, you're so.
Well, that's a day. I would hope that when I bring that up, that I definitely like. That is definitely a distinction with a difference as far as that goes. I'm just saying much in the same way as I bemoan the lack of work for actual character actors and actresses. Where it's like, oh no, it used to be like the leading man or leading lady that also could do character work was kind of like a rare aberration. Now it's like, oh no, you have to do both of them because people only want to see pretty people on the screen.
Yeah. We need somebody to be the pig and sing 5, so it's you, Taron Egerton.
Right. Exactly.
But you get a feeling though, like the celebritization of the voice acting was something that he was kind of bemoaning even then, right? Like he's like, oh, everyone knows these voices. I'm trying to get some new voices.
He was trying to get someone that were different. They were like not new to the audience.
There's a game online where it's just voice actors guessing other voice actors' performances, and my favorite thing is that multiple times, no matter what the voice sounds like, it's fucking Alan Tudyk because he is such a good voice actor. He'll come out and it's still me. He did just the chicken who didn't actually have lines in Moana. In Moana, like, okay, that's Alan, amazing. You got it. You are both a good regular actor and voice actor, but that is an exception, not the rule.
Arguably, Resident Alien would not work if he was not able to do that very unique voice. And that show was brilliant. Like, that show was absolutely hilarious. But if he, wouldn't work if he just got, like, a guy. This is just some guy.
Yeah, and Joe DiMaggio and, God, who's the voice actor who does Fry? There are some voice actors right now who are, like, Billy something.
Billy,
Chat, help us out.
God, I was gonna say Billy Zoom from X, Billy Wilder, the director. No, God damn it. I can't if I can. Someone's got to know, right?
Oh God.
So this is the last thing before we do Letterboxd.
Billy West. Billy West.
Thank you.
I just wanted to quickly do the. Katie sent me this. It's three decades of Akira slides, and it's just showing all the Akira slides and various.
Matt Gilbert is not Billy Zane. No.
There's 43 different quotes in here with different scenes.
That's fucking
It's like, yeah, bikes and bikes. And it's just legs.
Yeah.
And then they start to face the other direction in some of them, which I think is touching just a little. To put this in perspective, the only
It's a
scene
5-hour compilation.
The only scene's more quoted than this scene. We're talking Psycho, the shower scene. We're talking I'm Flying from Titanic. Conan knows that one real well, I'm sure. And Bullet Time, which is inspired by this. So, it's impressive in my mind.
Yeah.
Carmen
San Diego. Forgot about it.
Steven Universe.
We're only up to 2019. I like that those dudes just got lazily knocked over. They're like, oh yeah.
Yeah, Horse is doing it now too.
We're barely into COVID.
Rescue all that strange vehicle of it.
Decades of this being the standard.
Yeah, you'd be forgiven for thinking it's a movie about cool motorcycles.
Detective Conan, by the way. That last one, Detective Conan.
I'm aware that exists. There you go. All right. So, Letterboxd, of course, is a place for film lovers to talk at with and to each other about the films they love, maybe the films that they didn't love, maybe the films that they exclusively reference motorcycle slides in. Who knows? And of course, it is a bottom-up democracy. Everyone gets to have their say, not just the Siskel's and Eberts of the world. Everyone gets to chime and opine about the movies that they want to discuss. Of course, this is best done succinctly. You keep it short, you keep it snappy, you work in your tight five, and these are collected weekly by myself for us to react to on the show. These are the Letterboxd one-liners for Akira! Let's go. Well, how are they going to have the Olympics now?
It's so much funnier that they really did have the 2020.
I know.
I know, right? I totally thought about that when I saw that.
Yeah, well, so the movement against having, because like a lot of people were protesting in Japan, and they were quoting Akira to protest the Olympics going there.
It's great. That's so good.
I would have given them so much credit if they had included just a kid in a red cape in their opening ceremonies that year.
Oh my God! How amazing would that be? Awesome.
Or like just a giant specimen jar.
Yeah, exactly. It says Olympics on it. This movie costs 1 billion yen. If you gave me 1 billion yen, I would be dead in 2 days.
1 billion yen.
What is that in American money?
I don't know. Anyone got a conversion calculator around?
Well, they said that the actual price for it, like at least the Japanese version, was something like 10 million in American money, or
Yeah.
You can't truly call yourself a cyberpunk unless you're capable of transforming to a techno flesh monstrosity. If you can't, you're just a punk.
Yeah. That's a lot like champagne. If it doesn't come from the flesh monstrosity region, it's just regular.
I like the idea that Tetsuo is like a cyberpunk, and then Canada is just a punk. Like, you're just a punk.
Regular ass punk.
If I were given godlike powers, I would just do a bunch of nice and cool things, and it wouldn't corrupt me at all.
Sure.
You say that now.
The general had the clickiest, clackiest heels I've ever heard. Bro walked into the room and silenced it with the echoes of his dainty heels.
Louis Vuitton red bottoms, bitch.
Exactly. Let him know who you're wearing.
They could have brought him down by just playing the sound of those heels and being like, "Is this who you want leading Neo Tokyo?"
Amazing.
There's the scene where the guys in the helicopter and they're clearly like they don't know what's going on with Akira and with Tetsuo, right? Like they don't know that whole saga is going on. So it's just a guy in a helicopter that's like talking shit about the military coup, and he's like, "Now the stupid military is telling me to pull over this helicopter, and I'm just trying to report on the military coup," and he's like on like fake live TV. Like, this is a good aside for like to remind us that like the normal person in Neo Tokyo doesn't know what's going on right now. He's just talking shit.
It's great. You're not a gifted kid. Now those little freaks from Akira, those are gifted kids.
And that's why gifted kids are so traumatized.
That's a Montessori school is what it is.
Exactly. It's just very unorthodox.
Yeah.
I went to a Montessori school and I didn't have anything like that happen to me.
They're a very unique method.
Womp womp.
It's a charter school. Damn, they really talk about Canada a lot in this.
Well, that's gonna be once Canada gets a nuke and tries to challenge the U.S. to a battle. You know what I mean? It's gonna be like, I'm no longer the little brother. You know, like now I'm the big guy. Sorry, sorry.
One of my favorite things about that is that I was working in Whole Foods and there was some weird little kid in a cart who had just like learned the word Canada, the country, and he just kept screaming Canada while they were in the store. And you would see people turn around and like whisper to themselves, Tetsuo.
That's awesome.
It hit for certain customers way too hard.
That's good. I love it. This go hard.
It does.
Yeah,
it do.
That's cool. Especially that last 30 minutes, man.
The first 30 minutes too, though, like in different ways, obviously. Like but they both go hard. Like I could have watched the entire movie just about the motorcycles, and I would have been cool with it. Like, where they go next? Like,
yeah. Where they go? Who are they fighting next?
Are there other
cops
gangs?
Get them?
Like,
yeah, exactly.
Is that Cloud Gang their only?
Yeah.
It's such cinematography. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. There are many, many complex characters in anime. A very underrated example would have to be Tetsuo!
That is the correct pronunciation. That's the emphasis.
I saw one thing, you know, like that feminist kind of site, like the Mary Sue or whatever.
Yeah.
They were like, Akira shows us the way to create complex, mentally ill characters or whatever. And it was a picture of Tetsuo.
That's good shit. Yeah.
How much is Akira bike, by the way?
You got to steal one.
Yeah, exactly. That's a 5-finger discount, as they say. Those are the Letterboxd one-liners for Akira. Please follow the show at our Letterboxd HQ account at Movie Night Extra, where we're covering all of the various movies that we cover on the show, as well as extended materials, clips, all sorts of fun stuff on there. So follow us on Letterboxd Movie Night Extra. Forrest is over there at Always Flacco. Oh, Canada! He's logging on stuff we do in the show and lots more. So follow him as well as a human being. He is a person that is on that.
I am a human being on this platform. Beep boop beep.
Beep bop beep bop bop. Short prop. I am, of course, at Conan Neutron. The capsule's president, Emeritus. That is the name of the gang, by the way, in case anyone was wondering what that reference is. They're called the Capsules. So there.
Yeah.
If I missed that reference, that's
because they do be selling capsules.
They do be selling. It's literally on his jacket. It's on his exactly. It's on his jacket.
I am
what do
a
you
drug
mean you don't
dealer.
know?
That's why it's on my jacket.
Yeah. No. Oh no, sir. No. We do macrame. No, you got it's on your jacket, bro.
And in the live action remake, they make Kaneda like really straight edge against drugs, and Tetsuo was like, so like they were like, no, can't. And I'm like, they sold drugs. There were teens who sold drugs.
Actually sell drugs though. Of course, at Conan Neutron, covering the highbrow, the midbrow, the populous all that kind of stuff. And new Criterion Challenge coming in on the 15th. So 5 days, I think we're going to, KT is going to join me on that one. We're going to live stream our choices. So if you want to follow along, that would be a good time to jump on in for that. Not compulsory, but of course, always interesting. So follow me at Conan Neutron for that. KT's at Movie Runtime. Yamagata, have faith that she's going to be logging all the stuff from her great show, What If I Don't Like It, as well as Movie Runtime and this show as well. Please follow KT. And then, of course, Adam, Christina Emeritus right now is also on Letterboxd, and you should follow her as well.
She's watching dogs, and she's like, Canada!
She has to go on Dogger Box? I don't know. I got nothing.
She's watching dogs. One thing we didn't touch on that I think is really funny, the first thing that Tetsuo does when he breaks out of the facility the second time, like when he realizes he has the powers, he goes to the spot where they sell the drugs, and the guy that gives them the drugs is like the barkeep or whatever that gives them to sell, and he just like kills that guy and takes the drugs, and he pops them in his mouth while he's talking to them.
Let's hit it with the plugs.
If you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe, and then hit the bell to get notified whenever we're streaming. And we'd humbly request that you watch the video to the end, because it helps us with the algorithm and helps more film fans to discover the show. We're also monetized. If you want to get your chat questions definitely read on stream, you can always send us a super chat, which will help us keep the show going. Every cent helps. If you're watching on Twitch, you can gift us a free sub on Amazon Prime with your Prime membership, but getting subs on Twitch is always appreciated, and it helps to follow us on there as well. We also have an audio feed, which is available wherever you download podcasts, if you prefer to listen to podcasts rather than watch the stream. That's updated usually the same day we stream, but watching on YouTube and Twitch is the best way to get the show first, live as it happens. If you want to support us with a monthly donation and get access to all of our after parties forever, which go patron only after we do them, you can become a patron at patreon.com/movie night extra. Link is in the description for that. It really helps us keep the show going since we do have some expenses to make this happen. We also have a Discord community. Link is in the description for that. We sometimes watch movies we cover on there. We get into conversations about everything from film to TV shows to related podcasts. We even have a Discord channel for memes. It's really fun on there. You can find us on all the social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, and Threads. You connect with us on all of those. Talk to us. We'd love to hear from you. Lastly, we recently made a TikTok at Movie Night Extra where we're putting up short form clips from the episodes. Okay, passing this to Conan so he can tell you about his music and this week's Protonic Reversal. Conan, who's on Protonic this week?
Busy week. So I mentioned in the context and the body of the show that Alexander Hacke from Uncensored Neubauten and Daniel DiPicciotto, who are together, the duo Hacke DiPicciotto. That episode's up for patrons now. That happened on Monday. I have Brant Bjork from Caius tomorrow, which is a pretty big deal, as well as Brant Bjork Trio, Stoner, lots more. And then Jamie Stillman of Harriet the Spy, and also more known, and Party of Helicopters and Earthquaker Devices, the pedal company, coming on Thursday. So that's going to be a good one as well. So 3 for this week. I'm making up for lost time. Still have the best of the my top albums of the year best of episode is going to be later next week. I'm not interested in Spotify wrapped conversations right now. Sorry. Peace and love. So that's all coming up. Patreon.com/ProtonicReversal, $1 a month for advanced access to all that stuff, but always free. ProtonicReversal.com. Get it wherever you get your podcast. NeutronFriends.bandcamp.com for Conan Neutron, the Secret Friends stuff. I'll have stuff I keep saying it. One of these days it'll be true. I'll have stuff to announce fairly soon, not the least of which includes the new records. So keep an eye out for that. But right now we have a bunch of orders going out for leftover tour merch and posters. So if you're interested in getting those, good time to do that. And Caterwall 2025 is getting announced at the beginning of the year too. So be on the lookout for that. KT, what do you got?
Sorry, I was trying to share the Discord, the corrected Discord link to people in the chats there.
Got it.
It just has expired. We'll get you guys that. Don't worry, it is available. I got blocked from being able to share a link. I have just started. Yeah, it says my comment has failed to post. It's okay. We'll figure it out. I've got somebody coming on, and I talked about this a little bit earlier. They have watched Back to the Future 3 and Back to the Future 1 many times, and they love them, but they have never seen Back to the Future 2. And we recorded part 1 of that yesterday. Yeah.
All right. That is so weird, but okay. Yeah. All right. Sure.
It is a fascinating story. This is also the beginning of season 2, so we're unpacking my new questions. Instead of doing Letterboxd top 4, I am asking more of a inside the actor's studio, like questions about movies that get people to answer off the cuff, as opposed to preparing a list for me. So, that kind of stuff is happening. That episode will be out on the 1st. Coming out on the 15th, though, is going to be a matinee mini where we're going to do a look at So I Married an Axe Murderer, which is the first episode of the pod ever. So it'll just be formatted to be just the back end with a little introduction to kind of frame it for you. So instead of being like close to 2.5 hours, it'll be more like an hour and a half.
Nice. Very good. Look forward to it. I listen to every episode.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm just updating the Discord links. All right.
Great, sweet, yay! Join us. We love when you join us in that Discord.
Yeah, it's a good time.
It's weird that they expire. Like they expire. Like it's like
you can set them
that.
to never expire, but you have
time.
to. You have
I don't
to
know.
do that.
I do it every time. And somehow
Somebody asked me about it last week, and I was like, "I'll just send it to you. I don't know anything about that."
They still expire even if you set them to never expire. It's weird. Then it still says like Forrest Miller has invited you to join the Discord or something, and it's like I don't know if I want my whole name out there to be like I'm the one inviting you, like you know what I mean? Like it's a little too intimate. I don't know.
Yeah, have I? I don't even know you.
But yeah, I just updated it.
Cool.
On the description too.
Okay, cool. So it's now working for everyone.
Nice.
It should be. Yeah.
You tell us.
We'd love to hear from you. Unable to accept the invite.
Oh no.
Oh no. We might just have to put something out on our social medias as well afterwards, so you can find it. You can find it there. If you guys are not following us on Blue Sky yet, do follow our account on Blue Sky. It's a wonderful way to get to the Discord link because we have a link in bio that gets you there. But it is also a place we're trying to drive some new traffic to. So come join us there instead of on the horrible other version.
Yeah, we get less algorithmed out on Blue Sky than we do in other places, which we like. We like when people can actually read what we have to say. Rather than
exactly.
I guess there's like I was listening to something where someone was saying that on the other one, the one that the other social media site, there's a version of it where it takes away like you put your thing in there and it takes away the retweets and the likes and like the the stuff they just put on your algorithm, and they said that or the stuff they put on your feed, and they said that without all that stuff it's actually really bleak, like how few people are actually at any given time like tweeting. It's like the same people usually over and over again.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I believe it. That's one of the reasons why I'm technically still on that platform, but am I really? Anyway.
I like the Film Sky community. I think that Blue Sky is a fun place to be. Definitely join us there.
Blue Sky is the least worst out of all of them for sure. Which is the best praise that I can muster up for social media.
I'll give it to Twitter. It's better than Threads because Threads keeps giving me like they promote like it's either somebody's pet dying and they're like posting about it, or like their family member dying, or it's somebody being like, I'm 40 years old, am I still hot? And it's like, this is clearly engagement baiting.
Threads is like hyper whatever Facebook has turned into, and I mean that as an insult, to be clear. But Blue Sky is, especially if you use feeds, Blue Sky is very interesting. Anyway,
I have fun on there. But Conan, let's hear those final thoughts.
Sure. So I think that Akira is one of the greatest animated films of all time, and up there as one of the best dystopian movies. I think it takes advantage of the form of animation to do things you absolutely cannot and should not try with live action, and it's groundbreaking in form as well as story. So it's a foundational cyberpunk movie, but it's also a social critique. It's many things. I definitely would not call myself an anime hater, but it's not something I normally seek out. So it takes something really special for me to engage. And a lot of times it's just, not to my sensibility. It's just not that it's bad. It's just not for me. Right. So Akira not only was the first one I ever saw, setting an almost impossible standard, but it's a paragon of the genre, and it both embodies and transcends it. It's a joy to discuss it, really.
All right, KT, let's hear those final thoughts. You get the special final position tonight on the.
I think that it's weird that I find myself in a position where I wind up being most people's anime friend. because I have this feeling that like, no, my anime friends are like deep, like they know all of the Japanese volleyball specific ones. Like they follow genres so deep and so niche. I wish I was kidding, but my friend Noah is so good at knowing the sports anime ones. So like, I feel like when people look at me, they're gonna be like, of course, Katie likes Akira. Of course, I'm going to be telling you to watch this. And if you did like Akira, go to my letterbox. I have a great list of other animes that are great to start with. I would send you right to Ghost in the Shell, to be completely honest. The Tachikomo in those are so cute. And then I would send you to Cowboy Bebop as well for a series, even though Forrest might not want to join us there. But
it is really good, and there is a movie. It just happens after the series. So
yeah, and it's got such a soundtrack that is influential to the way that it is shot. So that if you're feeling Akira and you're liking that aspect of that, you're gonna see that in Cowboy Bebop, as well as get really great animation with wonderful voice acting. And the dub there is actually really good. I like the voice actors who dub on that. So
I feel like Ghost in the Shell is a perfect example of why they should not do like a live action Akira.
Oh man, yeah, what a bummer.
Yeah.
What a bummer.
Yeah, that and I think we had also talked about the Aeon Flux is another example, even just animated, not particularly anime, but animated, that doesn't really work. But what I wanted to read to people was a friend of mine had just seen Akira for the first time in March, and she wrote this review, and I found it incredibly compelling. It's on Letterboxd. Her name is Ghoul Gruel, and she says, how do you even review something like this? It's an absolute masterpiece. You see still pics and you think, oh yeah, I can appreciate that. You watch this film and it blows your skull apart with how detailed, fluid, and engaging it is. All the elements are so well executed, the sound design manages to keep up, and it's just a perfect layered story. Unbelievable that this was crafted in 1988. What a feat. I am in awe. That is someone who had no context, who just saw it for the first time this year. So if you are listening to us and you haven't, you're going to feel that. I can't tell you, it's like watching Everything Everywhere All at Once for the first time. It gets in your bones. You can't look away. Every single frame is just electricity into your eyeballs.
Yeah, it's crazy, like living in the Akira wake, I guess, right? Like the time after this movie came out and this time after American audiences were able to see this movie, where literally the reason that there is like an Akira slide compilation is that every single pretty much anime or like American manga like related kind of thing, they all are bowing their heads to be like thank you for creating something this transcendent. And it's like you like living in the wake of that. Like I feel like anime is so ubiquitous at this point. Not saying that like the more obscure ones are, but like just we've lived with it for a long time, right? Like, and like looking back at it and be like having to take that out of your mind and be like, oh shit, this is like the first big one that made it here, rather than just being in Japan and didn't even intend to do that. It's like Jesus, like this thing has so much that all of the rest of them, or not all of it, but like a lot of the rest of them have had. Like,
oh yeah. Like we talk about how it's hard to watch Akira. You got to download Crunchyroll. It's hard to find. In order to see the Cowboy Bebop movie, I had to go to the like most obscure theater in Greenwich Village and watch it with just my brother and my sister because nobody else is in the theater. Like if you could get a friend from Japan to mail you something over, because otherwise you had to wait for a year for them to even send it if they wanted to. Like we are living in an age where it is too easy to access it.
Right.
Not in a good way though.
It's everywhere. All right. Well, next week we have 2 episodes, right? We have City of Lost Children, and then our second
Jared.
And Children of Men Reloaded. Yes.
Yeah.
Very excited.
2 children, 2 men.
2 children. Tune in.
Yep, gonna be a good time.